Hi, I'm Aron, and you're watching Atheist Edge.
Hello and welcome back to Atheist Edge. We have a very special guest in the studio today. He is the host of the Ramen podcast. He's the author of The Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism. He was in the films My Week in Atheism and Batman and Jesus. He's an international public speaker and debater. He's the director of the Phylogeny Explorer Project, the producer of Living Science Lessons biology videos for students. He's the star of the ubiquitous 17-part video series by the same name, Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism, and he's currently running as a candidate for Texas State Senate District 2. Ladies and gentlemen, Aron Ra.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
No, my pleasure.
First, you just came back from Finland, Atheist Conference there. You've traveled to at least 20 countries that I know of in the last few years. How has that been?
That was a pretty good count from you. I mean, yeah, I think it was actually 22 countries in the last, say, 3 years that I've been doing this full time. And it's been on, I think, 15 countries in Europe, and then, of course, Canada, and then Australia, New Zealand, and Dubai, and India, Oman, and Qatar. It's been crazy. Yeah.
During your travels, being a high-profile celebrity, do you ever fear for your safety? Do you have maybe an entourage? Do you have security, or how does that work?
I don't.
Have you ever had any scary incidences?
No, I've got two thoughts on that. I mean, there are 2 time zones that I haven't been to yet, and seriously, that's it. One of them is Thailand, and the other one is Bangladesh. And I have to tell you, to be honest, I'm actually tempted to go to Bangladesh just to announce that I'm going to be there and announce where I'm going to be.
Ooh. See what happens, right?
And because I mean, somebody has to. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to call this shit out. Because one thing, the thing about terrorism is it only works when you're afraid, and when you have to live in one of these countries, and you can't speak out. I have the greatest empathy for these people. I'm so fortunate that I'm not in this situation. I mean, I tell a lot of people that when I went to Dubai, it is a Sharia state, although it's the most progressive. It's like Las Vegas dipped in glitter on Arabic dime.
They cater to Americans there too. So.
Yeah, but it's still a Sharia state. Mm-hmm. So I found myself in a public restaurant, and I'm at a table full of Arabs, all wearing the dish dash and kufiyah and all this. And they'd never met an atheist before. So, I mean, a handful of these people are sitting there asking me questions and saying the standard apologetics you always hear. And so I remember saying to one of these guys, okay, look, here's 5 reasons that we know that the Quran is wrong.
Yeah.
Turns out...
For starters.
Yeah. Turns out it's illegal to say the Quran is wrong. So I was not able to get through my list.
What happened?
My host grabbed me by the shoulder and said, "We got to go." Because I just said in a public restaurant that the Quran is wrong.
Wow.
So within that minute, we were in the car and down the road to an undisclosed location. Or else I'd still be in Dubai now. So there's a lot of people that make comments about, First Amendment rights, and that they think that the First Amendment means that they should come onto your Facebook channel and they should be allowed to tell you what an asshole you are on your own Facebook. Yeah. They think that that's what the First Amendment means,
Doesn't it kinda?
Well, no. It doesn't mean you get to go into somebody's house and shit on their rug.
You're right. That's a good point.
There's a certain amount of decorum, but what it does mean is that you have free thought. I mean, like, for example, in the Sharia states, in Dubai, even in Dubai, they have a racist legal system where foreigners can come in and drink alcohol and do as they will and dress how they will, But Arabs, different standard. If you're Arab, you have to believe, right, in Islam. You can't question it. You're 4 years in prison if you say, you know what, I don't think this is true. And you're Arab, gone. That's what the First Amendment is. That means you can have independent, free thought, and that you can express those opinions without being sent to jail for it.
Yeah. So you'd never actually step foot in Indonesia. You would threaten it and just kind of shake the hornet's nest and see what happens, see what hornets come out of it. Would you ever consider going to somewhere like that?
I would.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You wouldn't fear for your safety at all?
I would. I would. I mean, I'm not a fool.
You'd bring an entourage with you.
No.
You bring some muscle, right?
It's not about that. It's that the only way to call out terrorism,
to not be afraid,
is to not be afraid of it.
Right on.
And I am sick to death of Americans, and I'm sorry that I'm going to say this, but I'm sorry, this is something that boils in me. I'm sick to death of Americans who sing that stupid fucking song about how this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, yet we have given up all of our freedoms out of fucking fear.
You're preaching to the choir, my man. Sorry. Before we started rolling, I'm just going to disclose that we started talking about some libertarian issues, and the idea of cannabis legalization came up. So I'm just going to give you a platform to kind of talk about that, and we stopped it in mid conversation. So I don't exactly know where you're at on it. So hit it.
All right, well, I'll be happy to. I mean, first of all, I want to say, as I mentioned to you earlier, when I was experimenting with marijuana as a kid, I mean, somebody laced my shit, I don't know, with a PCP or whatever, but it messed up my whole weekend.
That's called getting wet.
Yeah, so...
That's not a good thing.
Yeah, so consequently, I've never been able to enjoy marijuana. It could be legal everywhere, and I wouldn't be doing it. Okay, so just to clarify where I'm coming from on that. It has nothing to do with my personal interests or what I want. But the data is in. If you legalize marijuana everywhere that they've done it, whether it was in Oregon, where examples they brought in so much revenue that they had a tax-free day for their citizenry because they had so much extra money, and in Colorado, where they recently announced that they had 100, and you know how sparsely populated is Colorado, and yet they still managed to raise $110 million on the revenue of marijuana sales.
110 million?
110.
I thought it was higher than that even.
Well, but it's 110 million on a sparsely populated state
For education, infrastructure.
and that's where they apply the money, right? They apply it to sensible things like increasing education, which is the one thing that America should, and I have to tell you again, complaining about America because the solution to so many of America's problems is that we need to do the exact opposite of everything the GOP wants to do. If you want to emasculate or take the power away from the Mexican drug cartels, you legalize marijuana. You don't build a wall. And if you build a wall, then you are emulating Gorbachev, right? Mr. Gorbachev, build up that wall, but do it in Texas, right? You won't be stopping people from coming in because you've taken away everything that gave the United States a higher quality of living than anywhere else. And that's what made America great. You want to make America great again? Bring back our standard of living. Because that's what did it. I've known people who were raised in the Soviet Union, who identified as communists, and they said what won the Cold War was not our superior military technology. They don't think we have ever had superior military technology. What won was color TV. Because they think, growing up in a communist country, they make sacrifices for the common good. And yet they see American television, because American television goes everywhere.
Yep.
So in every country, they see that Americans were living better than they were. And that's what wins. But when you take away our Medicare, and you take away our Medicaid, and you take away Social Security, and you illegalize everything, right? And then you deprive every aspect of what made it good to be in America, then you put up a wall, you're not going to be keeping people out, you're going to be keeping people in.
I hope you guys are watching. Okay, rewind and just listen to what he said again, because that was pretty profound.
Already, illegal immigration is down, not because of any threats of deportation, but because there's nothing to get here.
Yeah.
They've screwed the country over that badly. And our alliances with our $100 million arms deals, nothing says peace like a $100 million arms deal with the people who fund terrorism. Why the hell? Oh, you have oil, so we're going to suck your dick because you have oil? Is that really what this has come to? This is what our country is? There is better ways. China is becoming one of the leaders in alternative green energies. They are investing hugely in wind power and solar generators and tidal
40
generators.
times more progress than we're making right now.
And they're hundreds of thousands of jobs, right? They're actually creating jobs by doing this. And what are we doing? We are bowing to automation. Exactly. And we are selling out to pay more for the military because, we couldn't elect, and everybody that knows me will know that I am not a Hillary advocate. I'm the furthest fucking thing from a Hillary advocate. But we wouldn't be in this situation if we had elected her instead of Trump. Now, this is not the best option. The best option was shut down by the DNC.
Do you think he even had a chance?
He not only had a chance,
with all the wheels in motion against him?
Right now the most popular politician in American history. Oof. So
we'd be far better off with him. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to go on the record as saying
we
that.
couldn't elect a guy who identified as a socialist who wanted everybody to have free health care and free education because those are too radical, right? So instead...
You've been to Germany. I mean, you've been to Europe.
Yes.
I lived in Germany for 3 years. You know how it can work.
And I know that it does work.
Yes.
So I mean, yeah. So we've seen how Trump has done. Well, he handed over a whole bunch of money to a company to make them stay in the United States. He didn't have to hand them over any money. If he was any good as a negotiator, he wouldn't have handed them over a dime. But he handed over all this money to keep their factory in the United States. It's fully automated. What's the point of having a factory that's fully automated in the United States? You're not providing any jobs.
Oh, this is what we're going to start talking about. What's it called? The minimum basic. Okay, so 35% roughly of all U.S. jobs involve driving. So you're talking about the car automation. We might as well just skip right to this fan-submitted question by Bill H. He's asking, what were you never asked during an interview but wish you were? And before the interview, we started talking about the share economy, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, automated driving. So if 35% roughly of all jobs in the United States are driver jobs, and we go automated, a lot of people are talking about this minimum basic income, $12,000-$17,000 that everyone just gets. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a full-on socialist state, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that it would be. But
capitalism.
Would that work?
Capitalism cannot work in a situation where there are no jobs. Capitalism requires growth.
What if we all got $12,000 right off the bat, though?
Capitalism requires continuous growth. And when you've already exceeded 7 billion people in the population, and you've already overfished the oceans, and you're already used up all the consumer resources there's going to be a collapse point.
And it collapses the middle class eventually.
Well, here, give me another example. I mean, I was offered a job once upon a time that would solve all my immediate debts if I just went up to Alaska and worked on one of these, these fishery areas, except that they changed the laws where they can't have, because they noticed that they had more and more fishing boats in the Alaskan waters every year, and yet collectively, even though they have more boats, collectively they're bringing in less fish.
Yeah.
So what's the mathematics on that? It means that humans actually are having an impact on the environment, and we need to wake up to that because it's one of those really uncomfortable truths that we're either going to notice it when we can do something about it, or we can notice it when it causes our own starvation.
Yep.
There's a reality that has to be accepted and embraced at some point. And I'm considered some kind of a criminal mastermind just for suggesting. I remember when I was 12 years old and we were looking at the population rates, and we were looking at the way that the Earth supports itself as far as the systems that were in existence then for food production and so forth before Norman Borlaug came up with GMOs that would still feed an extra billion people. And I remember suggesting that instead of circumcising involuntarily all these babies without euthanasia, without anesthetic. Without anesthetic, why not just do a painless procedure for vasectomy, for example? So this would curb our mass growth rate, right? I thought this was a suggestion, huh?
A eugenics program?
It's reversible.
What
that means is that birth control becomes where you don't have unwanted pregnancies. The pregnancies you have are the ones that you planned for. But that was considered a Nazi level kind of evil that I would say.
That's a pretty expensive reversal procedure, though. I mean, that's a kind of a drastic measure.
Okay.
When there's other procedures.
Let's compare it to chopping off a foreskin, which might accidentally end up being chopping off an entire penis.
Yep.
For no reason.
Yep.
In which point you might get herpes from getting a blowjob from the rabbi who did it. Right?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'm matching insanity with insanity. Because I don't think that we should be chopping off foreskins. And one of my favorite gospel is the Gospel of Thomas from the Coptic Gospels, wherein the disciples asked Jesus what he thought about circumcision. And Jesus' answer, and this is the only time where I've ever found the words of wisdom coming from Jesus, and it's in a gospel that didn't even make canon, is where Jesus said, if God meant for us to be circumcised, we wouldn't be born with foreskins.
Doesn't that make sense? I mean, to us, Thomas is the one disciple we can probably, as atheists, identify with the most, because he needed some evidence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go to another fence-a-minute question.
Are we done with this one? Because
Do you want to talk some more about Uber?
hell, yeah, I mean,
Let's do it.
my best friend right now is on a testing track for Lyft.
Okay.
Testing fully automated cars that use LiDAR instead of cameras and everything, so that they won't have the issue that Tesla ended up having, because Tesla was using simple cameras at that time. And so cameras require interpretation to understand what they're looking at. What, of course, LiDAR doesn't. LiDAR knows that regardless what it looks like, there's a thing there. So they don't miss this. But when you have your trucking industry, which is the biggest industry in the United States has, when the trucking industry goes automated, and they already have started making deliveries with fully automated trucks,
Yep.
and then Lyft and then Uber, so that you can suddenly, all your cars are going to be automated, including the one you drive home from the bar, so that you can no longer be criminated for driving drunk, because you're not driving. You you put it, and the car
You can
logs.
pass out in the back seat.
Yeah, exactly. If you have Uber and Lyft that are driving automated cars with people in the back seat that can't control the wheel, they're going to have to change the laws on this.
I've been an Uber and Lyft driver for 3 years. I only drive on the weekends, but there's been many times where they can't get out of the back seat. They're so drunk. I've had to carry them up 3 flights of stairs to their apartment. So there are some little anomalies that we're going to have to work out, but yeah.
But you see, what's happening is everything goes automated, it's not possible for these people to have jobs anymore. We're going to have to completely reconsider the entire structure that the United States economy is based on. And as much fear as people put into the word socialism, that's the only answer. And I'm not saying that as a socialist. I'm neither would I describe myself as a capitalist, because you know why I don't like to identify as a capitalist? Because I don't like lies. And if somebody holds up a sign that says free pizza and it's underlined, and then when I get really close,
What's the catch?
I get really close to that sign and I realize that that's not an underline, that's just really fine print with any regular purchase of two full price pizzas, I'm being lied to. Why did you price that at $4.99 instead of $5?
Good.
Are you trying to fool me?
I find myself identifying with a lot of what you're saying. I think it's good to know. It's just my co-host, Sam, is very libertarian, so I'm kind of torn a lot of things. A lot of these libertarian ideas that he has, I think some of them do mesh. Some of them overlap, but some of them are diametrically opposed to.
People are going to have questions about my politics since I am running for public office, and one of the first assumptions that people make is that just simply being atheist means I'm somehow a socialist or a communist or something like that. And
You're going to get that. It's Texas.
Yeah, if I suggest that the government has any minimal responsibility for its citizenry, then I somehow love the state. But in point of fact, I actually want less government than the people in Texas who are advocating less government. Because the people who are advocating less government want government that mandates or monitors everything you do in your bedroom. They want to control every aspect of your life. I don't. I think that the U.S. government should be responsible for a handful of things and not so much of those things. Defense is one thing we all agree on. The United States collectively, we would not privatize a defense company in a case of war, right?
No.
This is something the government needs to do itself.
But 25 times higher in defense spending than what the next 10 countries combined.
And that's what we start with.
I was a Marine for 21 years, and I'm still saying this.
So then
Our
Trump
defense
wants
spending
to
is out of
cut.
control.
Trump wants to cut every benefit for your mother, right? Disabilities, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, anything that would have aided unwed teen pregnancies, while refusing to teach sex education, while refusing to provide either abortions or birth control. So it created this positive feedback loop which creates a negative effect. which is why Texas has the most repeat teen pregnancies of any state in the country. Repeat teen pregnancies because
Is it the most?
Yeah, they haven't learned
knew
their
we were
lesson
down
after
there.
the first time.
Uh-huh.
So they're pregnant again when they're
Repeat
still
teen pregnancy.
when they're still
Yeah.
teenagers.
I know Mississippi's down there too, but I didn't know we were
Mississippi.
rock bottom.
You know what the purpose of Mississippi is to give us.
Here we go.
Is to give Texas somebody they can look down on. That's
Yeah.
because we're so close to the bottom. There aren't that many options. You know, and so look at Mississippi. It's one of the most religious states. It's the most Republican state. It's the poorest state. It shows the correlation, the negative correlation between religiosity and what they advocate is common sense.
So you are running for Texas State Senate. Where's District 2? That's from like Dallas to east to Tyler or so?
Well, it doesn't include Dallas.
Oh.
It's Dallas County, but it's far east of Dallas County. So Garland, Mesquite, I think it's Balk Springs, and then counties east of that like Rockwall on up to the border with Oklahoma. So very rural area.
That's huge. Now, the current senator in that district,
Bob Hall.
yeah, no relation to me, just so you know. He won by only 300 votes in his primary. Now,
Yeah.
So is there a voter apathy in this district? I mean, I know, I mean, let's be honest. You running in a heavily conservative district,
I
we
am.
know what your chances are.
Oh yeah.
You're making a statement.
Yeah.
We are behind you, but with voter apathy, what could you do to maybe drum up our voters on our side?
At the time that what I'm about to tell you, at the time that this happened, I was representing a 501c3, and I couldn't do anything about it myself. But we went to the town of Rowlett to their city council, and they wanted to stop the invocation, and this religious invocation before they do any city government business. And all these people, I mean, dozens of people have shown up to give very passionate testimony, some of them tearful. And there's a small riser around the banks where the people are sitting, that are the town council is listening to this. And you can't see that they're all holding iPads and stuff like that. But people had screenshotted what they were saying on Facebook. So while they're listening to very passionate testimonies about why we shouldn't be doing this, why we should be considering all these other things, the city council was saying, fuck these people, we're going to do what we want to do. Right? And so people are screenshotting that. And I said, if you want to get rid of the mayor, if you want to get rid of the city council, the way to do that is to go down to the unemployment line in Rowlett, Texas, and grab somebody who has a residence in that city and say, hey, you want to be the new mayor? Because only 11% of Rowlett turned out to vote in their mayoral election.
What's average? That's way below average.
It is, but that's typical for that area. So I'm like, okay, so you grab somebody from the unemployment line, and we back him, and we get all the publicity necessary for that guy. Now, I wasn't just saying that we grab an atheist. I was, grab a Christian so he's not controversial,
Right.
But
Unemployed.
just grab somebody that needs a job. Would you like to be the new mayor?
Oh shit.
And I couldn't personally advocate him for it because I was representing a couple of 501c3, and so there's restrictions on that. Now, in my current situation, as you mentioned, Bob Hall won his primary against another Republican because for the last 3 elections, the Republicans have held with no Democratic opponent. And I have to identify as a Democrat in this election because I need the advantage of the down ballot. Do I believe in the two-party system? No, I don't. Well, would I normally have identified as a Democrat? No, I wouldn't have, for different reasons. But in that primary, Bob Hall, I can't remember the previous guy, Sessions, I think. But anyway,
I don't know.
they had in their primary election, Bob Hall was criticized by the incumbent, who said that Hall had not paid his taxes. And Hall's response, his rebuttal to that, said nothing about whether he'd paid his taxes or not. Instead, he had criticized his opponent of being inspired by Satan.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
So we live in a time when right-wing conservative Christian dominionists can accuse each other of witchcraft.
It's true.
What are they going to do with me?
our last governor filled up a stadium in Houston to pray for rain. I mean, it trickles down from there. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and then they wanted, even that, they wanted to make sure that there was no way of verifying whether it had failed, right? So he said, don't necessarily pray for rain,
we
pray
had
for
5 more
whatever you want to.
Yeah, we still had 5 more weeks of drought after that.
Yeah, you know when the drought stopped?
No.
When they had the Texas Free Thought Convention,
Oh,
which was
that's
the last
right.
public appearance of Christopher Hitchens in an atheist conference.
Oh,
That's
poetic,
when it started raining.
poetic justice.
And that's when me and a handful of atheists from the leaders of the atheist community went to Lakewood Baptist Church, which has a seating capacity in their sanctuary of 16,000 seats.
You were kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the back of every seat has 5 or 6 different forms to fill out on how you donate to that church. Because that's what the real thing is.
Let's do another fan submitted question.
Okay.
All right. This is from Mark. He said, "What is your daily hair care routine?"
I don't have a hair care routine.
Is there some mustache wax? What do we got going?
There is mustache
Okay.
wax, yes. So far as I know, there's only one brand of the mustache wax. And the shampoo, I admit that I use shampoo that was designed for horses.
Hey, that's not might not be a necessarily bad thing, right? Awesome. Okay, last one's from Kelly. She's asking, are there any funny anecdotes of any of your fans just nerding out or fanboying, fangirling on you? Has any fan ever crossed the line of indecency, made an indecent proposal, whether in front of your wife or not?
A few times, but we're not going to go into detail.
Okay. We've had some just nerds, right? Okay. What would cause the most overall harm? Back on politics. If we you know what's going on with our current president. What would cause the most harm to this
I'm
country?
not sure he knows what's going on with our current president.
Here we go. Here comes the Aron rant. Let me lead you in though. What would cause the most harm? The way we are now with the man, boy, king, or if the king got deposed for some reason or another, we know possibly why, and then the current vice president with his dominionist, evangelical, theocracy bent.
Yeah, I'm not that concerned about President Pence because there are some functions where the president will actually have to stand in direct sunlight.
Give me an example. Like when?
Some inaugural
Yeah.
statement, at some point he's going to have to stand in direct sunlight, and I'm not sure that he can withstand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made a video about Pence during the primary wherein I called him out for wanting to promote he wants to promote the belief in Noah's flood, and he wants to teach evolution as just a theory, not a fact, which is a deliberately dishonest, open misrepresentation. He knows what theory really means, and he wants to teach it as a guess so that he can promote this mythical belief in magic, right? This is wholly dishonest, and it's unrealistic, and we are beholden to the oil companies so much that we have to deny climate change as well as evolution on top of everything else. So we're not allowed to teach anybody real science. Our children are not supposed to understand things. So this is why every other country is passing us by. And the other thing that irritates the hell out of me was when people like, my dear beloved father, when he said, "This is the best damn country there is." Well, maybe once upon a time, but you know what? It hasn't been for a long time, because if you look at any particular metric, I don't know what one metric would point to the United States being the best. We're number 37th in science standards. We're I think the best we rank in anything is like number 7 in some other metric, But everybody else is passing us by. It's like the tortoise and the hare, and we're having this wet dream about how great we are as we sleep on the side of the road, and all these other tortoises are passing us now.
That's good. All right, the question I always ask our guests, here goes. If irrefutable proof, a ton of evidence came down on you that Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, was true, you had to believe it, would you want to know that information? And if so, what would you do about it? How would it change your life?
Giving a realistic setup to this, if there was any kind of any truth to magic at all, then Spock would be able to demonstrate that with his mind meld, right? And Obi-Wan Kenobi would be able to, at demand, would be able to demonstrate things, levitating, and James Randi would have paid one of these guys $1 million already. Gandalf can wave a stick, and cause light to emanate, or any other thing. All these people can demonstrate these things, but for whatever reason, psychics under scientific conditions can never do that. And neither can anybody's interpretation of Scripture ever come up with anything that's consistent at all. Mm-hmm. But if God was real, they wouldn't need to. If God was real, we wouldn't have to have faith healers, or if we did have faith healers, they'd be working in hospitals. Mm-hmm. And they'd be regenerating lost limbs from amputees. They wouldn't be doing the kinds of things that they are. So, if God were real, there'd be many, many different ways of demonstrating that. And what would I do with that information? Depends on which version of God turns out to be real. Because it's the Bible God,
the Yahweh Old Testament.
If it's the Old Testament Bible God, then I'm still hell-bound. And I'm, being completely honest. When I read the Bible the first time, I'll be honest when I say I started to read the Bible the first time at 12 years old. I barely got out of Genesis, as I remember, before I threw the thing across the room in disgust. Because
How old were you?
I was 12.
12. Oh, okay.
I was taught that this is the Word of God, and God is love, and God is wisdom, and all like this. So if I read this, I'm going to get a level of morality and wisdom that is far beyond any human author. And I realized immediately as I was reading this that this is the work of an inferior being. These are the work of ignorant, bigoted, superstitious primitives. And so this is not God. Yep. And so I threw the book and I said, okay, and I demanded a prayer of God. He said, this is an ultimatum. You either show that the way the Bible describes you is not you, that they got you wrong, right? Or you come up with some justification for this horrible atrocities that are attributed in your name. And the justification of that is, or the challenge.
So you'd hold
him
accountable.
Yeah, is that if he did neither of these things, he could not have my soul. And I fully understood at 12, still believing in hell, that meant that I would go to hell. But then going to hell seemed preferable than having to kiss the ass of this intolerant, indomitable despot. How could you spend an eternity with something like that can read your mind and is constantly judging you? Who wouldn't kill themselves just to get out of a bad marriage, much less a telepath?
Amen, brother. Shout it from the rooftop.
Constantly scrutinizing you all the time.
Hey, Aron, thanks so much for coming. I've got a list of, if you want to plug anything, your website first off. What's your website?
Well, I need all kinds of support. I'm doing this, I do my activism full-time at patreon.com/ARONRA.
Okay.
I've never broken over 600 subscribers, and I know other people that are doing this that have literally thousands of patrons supporting them, and I only have a few hundred, so all the help that I can get there. My campaign, if you would rather support that, you can support the campaign at aronra.org. And you can make donations that way. I am not going the standard route.
You can support the campaign through aronra.org.
You can support the campaign through aronra.org, or you can support my activism directly through aronra at patreon.com. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm sidetracked, so I'm just going to leave it.
Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Aron Ra, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Bye for now.